All right, so the next stat I would like to share with you, this will be my last stat, this will be another one that's really interesting to you.
Nice.
So I'll read it out word for word. Since 2020, over 90% of B2B companies have transitioned to virtual sales models, driven by enhanced sales process efficiencies and advancements in management software. But South Korea and Japan remain the exceptions with a higher preference for face-to-face business meetings despite the global shift to digital selling. How do you feel about that?
Interesting, yeah. Makes sense to me. I mean, look, there's so many good AI agents out there now. We tested one the other day, which was for inbound telephone calls.
Oh, yeah?
And yeah, the person sounded probably 90% legitimate, I would say.
Oh, that's really close.
It's really close.
That's really close.
Yeah.
And obviously you being very articulate, your 90% is probably someone else's 100%.
Potentially. There were some pauses
Yeah.
and there were some pauses and things where they have to sort of buffer and process a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where they need to tighten. And they will.
Do you think there's a cap limit? Do you think the buffers and the little pauses are a result of the internet connection? And that's just something that we're going to have to live with. I don't think AI is ever going to overcome that.
Yes and no. Like, what if it's a really tricky question? Like, or what if you load up 3 questions in one?
Ah, yes.
And so then you go, okay, well then there needs to be a pause.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to cut the prospect off.
Yeah.
Mid-sentence. So you kind of need to know where they finish and be able to say, all right, I'm not going to cut them off here.
Yeah.
I'm going to let them talk. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of a pause. But the more and more people use it, and the more people become accustomed to it.
And the more that AI gets educated as well.
Yeah. And you go, okay, well, all right, it's obvious I'm not talking to a real person here. But in this instance, I do the same when I'm talking to my telco. I do the same when I'm talking to this. If I don't have a burning problem that needs to be solved there and then that I'm, upset and angry about, maybe this agent can actually help me because it worked for me with this company and that company and that company. So there's a few different thoughts there, I think.
You're making me think because a couple of things. When I'm talking to someone, I find that 2 of the hardest things is, number 1, obviously listen, but number 2, which is just as hard, is knowing when to jump in to say something and when not to say something and not have an awkward pause, especially when something's complex. So I think you're onto something that possibly, when it comes to voice AI, possibly is a final frontier because clearly AI's got the data now. And if it doesn't have the data, it could be educated within days, anything that it needs to know. So it's got the data. It just needs to do the timing. And that's a human relationship thing.
Yeah.
And that's a nuance that's a lot harder. Do you ever talk to your phone?
No. So I switched Siri off a couple of years ago, so I stopped talking to it.
Oh, okay. You're an Apple user. I use Samsung, and I use Gemini. The default setting is 0.5 seconds before it kicks in into conversations. But even at 0.5 seconds, it's really awkward. Sometimes I have free flow ideas, I have free flow conversations, and I could free flow very easily to Gemini. At other times, I've got a complex thing. I'm thinking, okay, what's the right word here? What's the right context here? And it's just that split second, 0.5 second splits to be precise,
that's interesting,
is enough to throw the conversation off where it's either jumping in and maybe it's jumped in and I said 5 more sentences and then it doesn't register. And I'm like, it's so annoying. I now need to repeat myself. So the nuances there is very, very tricky, I can imagine.
Yeah. And I think it also probably depends on the type of business. I mean, if you're a B2C company, there's probably less of a need to be building relationships and that kind of rapport because it's a bit more transactional.
Yeah.
Now, I think that then opens up an opportunity for a B2C company to be more relationship driven. But for the most part, I think it's probably a lot easier to sell B2C using AI than it would be B2B, where you've got to sit down and have a thorough conversation and like each other and trust that you're both on the same page. And
how about using B2B just as an initial teaser, just to, what's the word here? How when marketers vet whether they're suitable client, qualifying, yeah. What about a qualifying tool? Do you see it useful as a qualifying tool?
I think so, yeah. But we're testing it out for a finance and lending company. And we're thinking, this is probably the way to go, just to ask the initial questions, find out what they need, whether it's a business loan or a residential loan, and maybe just some really basic periphery information. And that, you're right, that'll help qualify and say, well, is this person legit or are they just, trying to find some more information, which the AI is not going to reject them. The AI is going to then direct them to, okay, well, on our website, we've got this information about this, that, and the other. Maybe something specific. They might have a very specific question that they want to ask, and the AI can point them in that direction rather than selling them the mortgage over the phone. But I'm sure it'll happen.
Eventually. So that's my last stat. Do you have any more
Yeah,
stats?
no. I read a post from a LinkedIn viewer, and in a nutshell, he was saying that he could achieve more by himself using AI in 1 week than an agency could previously in 3 weeks. Now, what was he referring to? So he was talking about making video ads,
Yep.
the editing, the publishing.
Wow.
He was then talking
Everything,
about, which is what I'm looking for at the moment in particular. He was then talking about the landing pages, then the email follow-up sequences, the whole marketing funnel. He built it in a week.
Amazing.
And that was from a guy that hadn't had experience building them before using AI. Like he built them using all the other tools and all the different fragmented tools that are around. And I thought that was really interesting because, he was using Claude. He mentioned Claude. And I'm going to mention Claude because
Best one out there right now.
I think it is as well. Yeah. And we use Copilot and ChatGPT exclusively for about 12 months. And then I spent 30 minutes on Claude and I said, that's it. I'm moving over, bought the paid plan. It was doing all this design for me that I could have never imagined I'd even be able to do on Canva, And Canva's a fantastic tool, but the way that it just picked up, I uploaded my logo and it did the rest for me.
I think when you utilize an AI tool to do things, I find that getting granular control is almost impossible with AI. So that's my hurdle. When I'm using it, I could create the campaign and generally it's going to look great. But if there was just something, maybe a word that I needed to be changed, or maybe an image, maybe instead of waving, I want that person to have their hands in their pockets.
Yep.
No amount of prompting is able to change that. And so that's my biggest gripe. And in those instances, I've needed to take the collateral or the JPEG or whatever it is, and to then take it to a designer and say, oh, design, can you now make the edits and Photoshop the hand so it's not waving, it's in their pocket. Yeah. So granular control is my only piece. But as all things AI, they move so fast, I'm sure it's literally a day away in order to get the granular control.
Definitely. And it'd be interesting. I mean, I work within small and medium businesses. So I've got a bit more flexibility around, does this look precisely on brand or does it look slightly off brand, or even worry too much about that, as opposed to a big commercial large enterprise. They're going to be very particular on...
there would be compliance.
Colours, typography, shapes, everything. Everything gets scrutinised and has to go through a process. Yeah, exactly. There's so much red tape. So works for me, but in that instance, but for larger organisations, there's probably a bit of a hurdle to jump.
Wouldn't it be amusing when the larger organisation, the person that is in charge of the compliance and the bureaucracy is actually an AI engine.
Yeah.
So an AI engine produces a piece of work, submits it to another AI engine in order to have it approved or not approved.
Yeah.
Then if it's not approved, it's pushed back to the AI engine, but then they keep on talking about it before they spit something out. And wouldn't it be funny if one day they behave like humans and it's such a bicker?
It'd be ridiculous,
and they can't agree on a piece of artwork, and it just goes on, and 2 months down the line, or maybe a week later, the project has gone over and above budget, and it's past its due date already.
Exactly. And then one of them's called into HR to explain themselves. It's just incredible. Yeah, exactly. It'd be incredible where it gets to. I think certainly in the marketing space, like from a corporate marketing perspective, there's a lot of marketing managers that are now building, they'll be building their own emails, for instance. If email's one of their big tools, they'll be building their own emails. They have access to platforms. And that's only going to get way more streamlined and become a lot more efficient and much easier to use. Less tech skills required.
Yeah.
Tell what to do and go and do it.
Yeah. So time flies. So we'll cut it there. Oh, thank you for listening to another episode of the Promo Playbook. Stay tuned for future episodes. Have a good day, everyone.